The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Samuel Johnson. There's a moment, silent, almost imperceptible, when control slips away. You open your phone to check one notification, and suddenly 30 minutes have vanished. You tell yourself it's the last episode, but before you realize it, the next one is already playing. You reach for one more bite, despite knowing you've had enough. We have all been there. But what if I told you that this isn't just a lack of discipline or weak willpower? What if I told you that the world around you has been carefully engineered to make resisting nearly impossible? At the center of this lies dopamine, the brain's primary reward chemical. It is what makes us feel pleasure, but more importantly, it is what makes us seek it. Thousands of years ago, dopamine helped us survive, driving us to find food, shelter, and social bonds. It was a necessary tool for human evolution. But today, dopamine is no longer just a biological function, it is a weapon. Technology companies, food manufacturers, and entertainment platforms have hacked into our brain's reward system, creating an environment that constantly overstimulates dopamine pathways. Unlike in the past, where pleasure was scarce and fleeting, today's world offers it in endless supply. Every swipe, every notification, every artificially enhanced flavor triggers the same neural response that was once reserved for survival. And yet, the more we indulge, the more we crave. This is the pleasure trap, an endless cycle of wanting, consuming, and feeling unsatisfied. Because here's the dark truth. Dopamine is not actually about pleasure. It is about anticipation. Studies have shown that dopamine spikes before we experience pleasure, not during. This means the moment you are about to take a bite of that sugary snack, or just as you unlock your phone, your brain floods with dopamine. Not because the reward itself is fulfilling, but because your brain is preparing you to chase it. And when that moment of pleasure fades quickly, as it always does, what happens? You go back for more. This is how we become trapped. It's why we can't stop scrolling. It's why fast food is engineered to be just satisfying enough to make you crave another bite, but never truly fulfilling. It's why social media is designed to keep you clicking, swiping, and engaging, always seeking that next small hit of dopamine. But what happens to a brain constantly bombarded with artificial pleasure? The answer is unsettling. Over time, the brain adapts to these high levels of dopamine by lowering its sensitivity. In simple terms, the more we chase pleasure, the less capable we become of actually enjoying it. This is why people addicted to social media feel empty after hours of scrolling. Why binge watchers experience a sense of numbness when the series finally ends. Why overindulgence in junk food leads to a desire for more, rather than satisfaction. The cycle is self-perpetuating. The more we seek pleasure, the less we find it, and the deeper we fall into the trap. But who benefits from this? To answer that, we need to look behind the curtain, to the architects of addiction. The ones who designed this system to keep us hooked. If there's one universal truth about human behavior, it's this: where there is desire, there is profit. The pleasure trap is not an accident. It is not simply the byproduct of technological advancements or the natural progression of society. It is a carefully constructed system, designed, tested, and optimized by some of the most powerful corporations in the world. And the reason is simple. Addiction is good for business. Take social media, for example. The business model of platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook doesn't rely on you using their apps for a few minutes and then walking away satisfied. That would be bad for revenue. Instead, their goal is to keep you engaged for as long as possible. To achieve this, they employ variable reward systems, a concept borrowed directly from casino slot machines. Every time you refresh your feed, you don't know what you're going to get. A like? A comment? A new post from someone you admire? The uncertainty is what keeps you hooked. Your brain craves the next hit, not knowing when it will come, but knowing that eventually it will. Tech companies study this. They track how long you pause on an image, which colors and fonts increase engagement, which types of notifications make you return faster. Your behavior is measured, analyzed, and manipulated to ensure that leaving the app feels like resisting a biological impulse. But it's not just social media. The food industry follows the same principles. The combination of sugar, fat, and salt in processed foods is no accident. It is engineered to be irresistible. Research shows that these ingredients activate dopamine pathways more intensely than whole foods, leading to compulsive overconsumption. Fast food isn't designed to nourish you. It's designed to make you crave more. Entertainment platforms? No different. Ever noticed how Netflix doesn't give you time to think before autoplaying the next episode? That's deliberate. They know that if you pause, you might realize you're not actually enjoying the content as much as you think. They remove that decision-making moment so you continue watching without resistance. Even the advertising industry plays its role. Commercials are no longer just about selling products. They are about selling lifestyles, making you believe that happiness, confidence, and fulfillment are always just one purchase away. And the result? A society caught in an endless loop of consumption of food, media, technology, without ever reaching true satisfaction. But here's the truly insidious part. The longer you stay in this cycle, the harder it becomes to leave. The more you overstimulate your brain with artificial pleasure, the more it dulls your natural ability to experience joy in real life. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's not science fiction. It is a reality backed by decades of research in behavioral psychology and neuroscience. It is why so many people feel exhausted, distracted, and unfulfilled, despite having access to more entertainment, convenience, and comfort than any previous generation in history. But perhaps the most terrifying question is this. If our desires are being shaped and manipulated from the outside, do we really have free will? Or are we just playing into the hands of those who profit from our addiction? Most people never stop to ask. Most never even realize they are trapped. But if you're still here, reading this, you are not most people. Now, the question is, what do you do with this knowledge? There is a comforting lie we tell ourselves. I am in control of my choices. We believe that when we reach for our phones, it's because we want to. That when we eat a bag of chips, it's because we chose to. That when we binge watch an entire season in one night, it's because we decided to. But the truth is far more unsettling. Most of our daily actions are not conscious decisions. They are habits, shaped by external forces we rarely notice. And the more we repeat these behaviors, the more automatic they become. This is known as the habit loop, a psychological cycle that governs much of our behavior. It consists of 3 stages. Cue, a trigger that prompts the behavior, a notification sound, a commercial, a feeling of boredom. Routine, the action itself, scrolling, eating, binge watching. Reward, the dopamine hit that reinforces the cycle. Over time, this loop becomes ingrained in the brain. You don't need to think about checking your phone. You do it instinctively. You don't crave sugar because you're hungry. You crave it because your brain associates it with a dopamine rush. And the worst part? Companies know this. They don't just rely on your habits, they create them. Take advertising, for example. Decades ago, brands sold products based on utility. This detergent cleans better. This car is more reliable. But today's marketing is no longer about function. It's about identity. Buy this and you'll be more attractive. Wear this and you'll be respected. Drive this and you'll finally be successful. They are not just selling products. They are selling emotions. And once they condition you to associate a product with a specific feeling, they no longer need to convince you. You will crave it on your own. This is why willpower is not enough. Many people believe they can break free from these cycles simply by being stronger or trying harder. But if willpower alone worked, addiction wouldn't exist. The truth is that discipline alone is weak against a system designed to break it. This is where dark patterns come in, psychological tricks used in app design, website interfaces, and digital platforms to override your natural decision-making abilities. Infinite scrolling removes stopping cues, so you never feel done. Autoplay features eliminate the friction of choice, keeping you passively consuming. One-click ordering makes spending money feel effortless, bypassing rational thought. Everything is engineered to make stopping feel unnatural. So ask yourself, are you making choices, or are your choices being made for you? Most people never question this. they never stop to examine why they behave the way they do. They continue scrolling, consuming, indulging, believing it's their decision when in reality they are simply following a script written by someone else. But awareness is the first step toward reclaiming control. Because once you see the illusion for what it is, you can begin to break free. Yet breaking free comes at a cost. And that cost is discomfort. As the habit loop tightens its grip, the pursuit of artificial pleasure exacts a hidden toll on our lives. Every dopamine hit that once promised satisfaction now comes at a price, a steep, cumulative cost that erodes our capacity for genuine happiness. The cycle that began with innocent indulgences slowly transforms into a relentless drain on our emotional and physical well-being. When we chase fleeting bursts of pleasure, our brain adapts. It downregulates its natural sensitivity to reward, leaving us unable to derive joy from even the simplest moments. This phenomenon, known as tolerance, forces us to consume more in order to achieve the same level of satisfaction. In essence, the more we indulge, the less we are able to experience real pleasure. Our senses become dulled, and what once brought delight now barely registers as a whisper of its former intensity. But the cost is not confined to the neurological realm. Over time, the constant pursuit of transient pleasures disrupts our relationships, work, and overall quality of life. Social connections suffer as we increasingly substitute virtual interactions for genuine, face-to-face moments of empathy and understanding. Meals, once a time for sharing and nourishing both body and soul, become mere opportunities to satisfy a fleeting craving. Even sleep, the natural process of renewal, is compromised when our minds are restless and overloaded with digital stimulation. This degradation of life is not a matter of moral failing. It is the calculated outcome of a system built to profit from your dependency. Corporations have long understood that when your brain is caught in the pursuit of endless gratification, you become a captive audience, malleable and exploitable. With every passing day, your ability to find meaning in life diminishes, replaced by an insatiable hunger for the next superficial fix. The cost, therefore, is not merely a personal inconvenience, it is a societal burden that undermines our collective potential. Moreover, this relentless chase for pleasure breeds a pernicious form of anxiety and depression. When our minds are constantly bombarded with high-intensity stimuli, the natural rhythm of our emotional state is thrown off balance. We begin to measure our self-worth not by our intrinsic qualities, but by the quantity of likes, shares, and fleeting moments of euphoria that we can capture. The result is a distorted reality where self-esteem is inextricably linked to digital approval, leaving us perpetually unsatisfied and anxious about our perceived shortcomings. The economic ramifications are equally alarming. As individuals become increasingly dependent on quick fixes, long-term investments in personal growth, education, and meaningful relationships take a back seat. Money flows into industries that feed on immediate gratification rather than those that build sustainable futures. This shift not only reinforces the cycle of addiction but also diverts resources away from endeavors that could foster real progress and innovation. Yet amid this bleak landscape, there remains a glimmer of hope. Recognizing the cost of pleasure is the first step toward reclaiming control. By understanding that the satisfaction provided by artificial stimuli is ultimately hollow, we can begin to seek out more fulfilling alternatives. This realization opens the door to practices such as mindfulness, which encourage us to be present in the moment and appreciate life's genuine rewards rather than chasing an endless mirage. Consider the wisdom of philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who once remarked that man is not the creature of circumstances, circumstances are the creatures of men. In this light, our current predicament is not an unavoidable destiny, but a challenge that can be overcome. We have the capacity to rewire our habits, to train our minds to value depth over superficiality, and to invest in experiences that enrich our lives rather than deplete them. Every moment spent in the pursuit of cheap pleasure is a moment stolen from the possibility of true fulfillment. The cost of this pursuit is measured not just in lost time, but in the gradual erosion of our ability to connect, to grow, and to experience life in its fullest sense. It is a debt that must be repaid through conscious effort and deliberate change, a debt that once paid can free us from the chains of superficiality and lead us back to a life of meaning and genuine contentment. Thus, as we begin to comprehend the profound cost of our collective pursuit of pleasure, we are left with a stark choice: continue down this path of diminishing returns, or forge a new way forward, one that values depth, connection, and the true rewards of the human experience. If the endless pursuit of pleasure leads only to emptiness, then what is the alternative? The answer is as uncomfortable as it is liberating: discomfort. In a world that constantly urges us to seek ease, convenience, and instant gratification, discomfort has become a foreign concept, something to be avoided at all costs. Yet discomfort is not the enemy. In fact, it is the very thing that allows us to grow, to evolve, and ultimately, to break free from the cycle of addiction. Throughout history, the greatest achievements, whether in art, science, athletics, or philosophy, have been born out of struggle. No profound creation has ever emerged from comfort. No extraordinary individual has ever been shaped by ease. The human brain was never designed to thrive in a state of constant indulgence. It was designed to adapt, to overcome, and to find meaning through challenge. Yet modern life has made discomfort optional. With the click of a button, we can entertain ourselves endlessly. With minimal effort, we can satisfy cravings that once required labor and patience. Hardship, once an unavoidable part of existence, has now been engineered out of our daily lives. And the cost of this convenience? Resilience itself. Consider this. When was the last time you truly endured discomfort without immediately trying to eliminate it? When was the last time you sat with your thoughts instead of drowning them out with music, videos, or distractions? When was the last time you chose to delay gratification, to wait, to struggle for something rather than taking the easy route? This avoidance of discomfort has made us weaker, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It has stripped us of patience, resilience, and the ability to tolerate even the slightest inconvenience. It has left us more susceptible to manipulation, more dependent on external validation, and less capable of finding meaning in the things that truly matter. But there is a way to reclaim control, and it begins with embracing discomfort. The concept of delayed gratification is one of the most powerful tools for rewiring the brain. Studies have repeatedly shown that those who are able to resist short-term pleasures in favor of long-term rewards are not only more successful, but also happier and more fulfilled. They do not fall prey to the dopamine traps designed to enslave them. Instead, they build discipline, focus, and the ability to derive satisfaction from deeper, more meaningful pursuits. This is why some of the most successful people in the world intentionally expose themselves to discomfort. Athletes push their bodies beyond their limits. Entrepreneurs willingly endure years of failure before achieving success. Writers, musicians, and artists suffer through creative droughts, knowing that inspiration comes not from ease, but from persistence through difficulty. The same principle applies to everyday life. Choosing to disconnect from constant stimulation, even for a short period, can reset the brain's reward system. Engaging in activities that require effort, patience, and endurance, whether it's reading a book, learning a skill, or practicing mindfulness, can restore the ability to appreciate life beyond instant gratification. Imagine for a moment what life would look like if you were no longer ruled by the impulse for immediate pleasure. If you could sit in silence without reaching for your phone. If you could resist the need for external validation. If you could find joy not in quick hits of dopamine, but in the quiet satisfaction of meaningful progress. This is the power of discomfort. It is not suffering for suffering's sake, but a path to something greater. A tool for reclaiming agency over your mind, your habits, and ultimately, your life. The system that profits from your addiction does not want you to embrace discomfort, because the moment you do, you become harder to control. You begin to think independently. You break free from the mechanisms designed to keep you weak. But understanding this is not enough. Knowledge alone will not change your habits. You must act, and that begins with one simple challenge. Sit with discomfort. Do not run from it. Do not seek escape. See what happens when you resist the urge to indulge. It will be difficult at first. Your brain will protest. Your impulses will scream for relief. But if you push through, something extraordinary will happen. You will discover that freedom is not found in pleasure. It is found in the ability to walk away from it. Chapter 6. Rewiring Your Brain, 700 Words. Breaking free from the cycle of artificial pleasure is not just about resisting temptation. It's about fundamentally rewiring your brain to experience joy in a deeper, more fulfilling way. Right now, your brain has been trained by years of exposure to instant gratification to seek quick, effortless rewards. Every notification, every sugar rush, every binge-watched episode has reinforced the habit of immediate pleasure-seeking. But just as it was conditioned into this state, it can be reprogrammed. The science behind this is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and change based on experience. Your neural pathways are not fixed, they are shaped by your behaviors. The more you engage in certain activities, the stronger those neural connections become. This is why breaking free from addictive behaviors is difficult. Your brain has been wired to expect them. But the good news? You can reshape your brain's reward system. One of the most effective ways to do this is through a dopamine reset, deliberately cutting out artificial pleasure for a period of time to allow your brain to recalibrate. Research shows that even a few days away from social media, processed foods, or compulsive entertainment consumption can make real-life experiences feel richer and more engaging again. To begin, follow these steps. Identify your biggest dopamine traps. What behaviors do you engage in compulsively? What activities leave you feeling drained rather than fulfilled? Is it social media, junk food, video games, shopping, endless YouTube or Netflix binges? Reduce or eliminate them for 30 days. This doesn't mean complete deprivation, but a conscious effort to minimize your exposure to artificial dopamine spikes. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, set specific times for social media use. Instead of reaching for processed snacks, opt for whole foods. Instead of binge-watching, watch a single episode with intention. Replace them with meaningful effort-based rewards. Read books. Exercise. Practice a skill. Writing, music, art, learning a new language. Spend time in nature. Engage in deep conversations instead of surface-level interactions. Meditate or sit in silence. Train yourself to be present. This process will be uncomfortable at first. Your brain will crave those easy dopamine hits. You may feel restless, bored, even irritable, but these withdrawal symptoms are a sign that your mind is detoxing from overstimulation. As the days pass, something remarkable will begin to happen. You will notice subtle joys that had been drowned out by constant artificial pleasure. Things you once overlooked, like the taste of a simple meal, the beauty of a quiet moment, the satisfaction of focusing deeply on a task. You will regain control. The longer you sustain this practice, the more your brain will relearn how to appreciate slow, meaningful rewards over instant gratification. You will feel your focus returning, your emotions stabilizing, your sense of fulfillment deepening. The empty cravings will begin to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose and direction. And most importantly, you will no longer be easily manipulated. The system that profits from your addiction relies on one thing: your inability to resist shallow pleasure. Once you rewire your brain, you become dangerous to that system. You become someone who is not swayed by cheap entertainment, not distracted by endless consumerism, not trapped in compulsive habits. You become someone who chooses what to engage in rather than reacting to external triggers. Someone who builds rather than consumes. Someone who values depth over distraction. This is not an easy path, but it is the only path to true freedom. Now, the final question remains. What kind of life do you want to live? One dictated by fleeting pleasure, or one built on meaning and self-mastery? Now that you see the system for what it is, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to more of the same. A life dictated by artificial pleasure, compulsive consumption, and fleeting satisfaction. A life where your attention is bought and sold, where your desires are shaped by forces outside your control, and where every moment of discomfort is drowned out by another hit of dopamine. The other path is harder. It requires resistance, discipline, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. But it also offers something the first path never will: freedom. Because here's the truth that most people will never realize. The ability to delay gratification is the single greatest predictor of long-term success, happiness, and fulfillment. The people who resist distraction, who choose to invest in deep work rather than fleeting pleasure, are the ones who build extraordinary lives. So now the question is no longer, how do I stop being manipulated? You already have the answer. The real question is, are you willing to do what most people won't? If you choose this path, it starts with awareness. You must begin to see the patterns for what they are. The next time you feel the compulsive urge to reach for your phone, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing this or am I reacting? The next time you find yourself binge-watching, consuming junk food, or scrolling endlessly, stop. Notice the discomfort that arises when you try to resist. That discomfort is not a problem. It is a sign of rewiring. It is proof that your brain is starting to fight back. This is what most people fail to understand. Breaking free from manipulation isn't about discipline. It's about reclaiming your ability to feel. Pleasure is easy. It requires nothing from you. But real fulfillment, the kind that lasts, demands something deeper. It demands patience, effort, and engagement with the world beyond a screen. Imagine waking up in a world where your first instinct is not to check notifications, but to move, to create, to think. Imagine a life where you are no longer a puppet to algorithms, but the author of your own story. This is possible, but only if you choose it. For the next 24 hours, I challenge you to step away from artificial pleasure. No social media, no processed junk food, no passive consumption. Instead, engage. Read, write, go for a walk without music or distractions. Have a real conversation without looking at a screen. Do something that requires effort, something that makes you uncomfortable. Then observe what happens. Notice how your brain reaches for stimulation. Notice how difficult it is to simply exist without distraction. This is the test. If you cannot go 24 hours without artificial pleasure, ask yourself, who is in control, you or the system? You have spent years being conditioned to believe that pleasure equals happiness, that convenience equals progress, that more is always better. But now you know the truth. Pleasure is not happiness. It is not success. It is not freedom. The most powerful people in the world are not those who chase pleasure. They are those who master it, the ones who train their minds to endure discomfort, the ones who build instead of consume, the ones who resist the cheap dopamine rush and invest in something greater. Most people will never do this. Most people will remain trapped in the loop, chasing the next hit, never questioning why they feel empty despite having everything they thought they wanted. But you are not most people. So now, I ask you, what will you choose? If this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment below with one word that represents what you are reclaiming. Your time, your focus, your freedom. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to go deeper, watch the next video. It might just change the way you see the world. The most dangerous thing to a system built on manipulation is a mind that thinks for itself. Are you ready?